What's up, guys? So I've been reading a book called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. And it's a really interesting book, really good read. Just came out this year, 2019. And it's all about building a better workplace environment, which is kind of Simon's his shtick, right? That's what he always talks about, is how to build a better workplace environment. And he started with, his first book was Start With Why, figuring out your why first, and then building out the how and the what, versus doing it the opposite way, which is what most companies do, is where they build with the what and the how, and that's what they try to sell to people, versus starting with your why, and that's why you're in business. His next book that he did was called Leaders Eat Last, and this was all about creating safety within organizations, something that he claims has stopped. Right around the 1970s, we saw a big decline in corporate safety for employees. So this book focuses on where companies focus on the long-term effects versus short-term effects. And one really interesting piece that I got out of this that I wanted to share with you guys was what he called the high performers versus high trust individuals. And one of the key organizations he studied for the book was the Navy SEALs, because they're one of the highest functioning teams that are out there. If you think about it, they go into these situations that are life and death, where they could end up, losing someone if their decisions are not cohesive as a unit. And he's some great examples, and there's some great stories of people who have performed in those roles and some good leaders. One thing he really brought out that was interesting to me was this dynamic of someone who is a high trust and a high performer. So when he drew it out, he draws it out on a graph, and on this side he puts performance, and down on the bottom he puts trust, or trustworthy is what they say in the book. And this would be low, right, and high, and this would be high up here. And he said it's pretty simple that nobody wants a low-performing, low-trust person on their team, right? That's pretty simple. That's like a no-duh statement. And then, of course, everybody wants the high-performing, high-trust individual on their team. Those two are pretty common, right? They're easy to say. If someone is not a great performer and they're not really trustworthy, in sync with your team, it's pretty easy to say that's not a fit for our team. And if someone is a high performer and a high trust individual, that's someone you definitely want on your team. Now, where it gets interesting is when you have someone who is a high performer and they are low trust. And when he asked the Navy SEALs, he said, what would you prefer to have, a high performer with low trust, or would you prefer to have a medium performer with high trust, or even a low performer with high trust? They unequivocally said this person right here, this high performer with low trust, is toxic to a team. And the way they framed it was, I know I can trust you with my life because you're performing well, right? So you're an able person, you're good at your job. So I know I can trust you with my life. The question the SEALs would ask is, on this side, when they think about trustworthy, is can I trust you with my money, and can I trust you with my wife? So that's how they frame this conversation, and they actually prefer a high trust moderate producer, or even a high trust low producing person, because those are the people that are the stickiness in your organization, right? They're the ones that are kind of the glue. And it's a really simple test to find out if you have someone in your organization who is this individual right here. You just go into the team and say, who's the jerk? Right? It's pretty simple, because everybody's going to go, oh, it's that guy right there, or it's that girl right there, or it's that person right there. There's always that one person on your team who is, if you have this person on your team, that's dangerous. That's what erode the integrity of your team. And on the flip side of that, if you have a low-performing, high-trust individual who is very trustworthy within the team, they exert leadership, they're always there for anybody, they have people's backs, and people feel very safe in their presence, that's the person you need to hang on to, not someone who gives you these, who's a high performer. And the strange thing about today's world, and this is what Simon is saying in his book, is that we are so focused on this scale here, this performance scale, right? We have so much data key performance indicators. We can see numbers for days about what makes someone a high performer versus a low performer, dollars brought in, dollars put out for that person, trainings they're going to, skill sets that they have. We focus so heavily on this side that we don't focus down here. And this is why we tend to see these individuals rise in an organization, and then you see that organization crumble because you're building it around a skill set, not around trust, which is integral to a team. So one of the people I follow, Patrick Lencioni, has a podcast out. He's the owner of the Table Group, and they do a lot of consulting, and one of their big things is helping organizations get healthy. And by that, the base of all of their things that they do is how do we create trust within an organization? And that's their one thing that they do really well. And he's written several books on the topic. Some of the top ones that I enjoy have been really helpful were The Advantage, which is more the business styling of it. He mostly writes in novels, so they're easy to consume. So The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team is a really powerful book. The Ideal Team Player is a really good book. And those are written in the novel format, so they're easier to consume. But at the base of his triangle, when he talks about how do you get results out of an organization or a team, he really looks at trust as being that foundational level piece of it. And it's not just trust as in being honest, right? So when we think of trust, we're like, oh, is this person going to be honest? No, it's more thinking along the lines of vulnerability within your team. Do they feel safe to challenge the CEO of a company? Do they feel safe telling you when they've made a mistake? Do they feel safe challenging you on something if they don't agree with something you're saying? And that all goes back to a core value conversation. It gets much broader as you go into it. And it's one of the most important pieces. And this is just something I thought was really valuable because I just feel like we spend so much time on this side of the graph, we don't ever stop to think about this side over here. And in the real estate industry, which is what I'm in, that's one of the big things we're always looking at is we're always saying, well, is this person a high performer? Are they selling a bunch of houses? That's what we're really looking for. That's the key metric we're driving for. And we've gotten to the point now where I say all the time, I can train a skill set, so I can train performance. You can always train performance. There's so many training guides out there. There are things, people will get better over time over here. This is different. This is hard to train. You can't train core values into someone if they have different core values than you. Not saying that theirs are right and yours are wrong, or that yours are wrong and theirs are right. It's more about, what can you train into a person inside your organization? What do you want your company to look like? So this is a really interesting thing to think about. And the question I would challenge you with is, if you are running a team, if you had an outsider come in, they asked you that question, who's the jerk? Who would they point at? Hopefully they don't point at you, but if they did, that's a good thing. Self-awareness is key, right? And then I would also say, if it is someone in your organization who is that toxic personality, is there a way that we can either correct it by having that conversation with them, or is it someone we need to help, be available to the marketplace, as they like to say? And then the other thing I would challenge you to look at is, who are my moderate to low performer people that may feel the pressure right now because they're low performers, but they're extraordinarily high trust individuals where people go to them when they have problems. They're great leaders. They step up for you. They're the core or the glue of your organization. You want to make sure that these people are not being driven out by these people so that your organization stays healthy for the long term.